coming to you live from the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. This is the Alex Morgan Show.
Hey folks, how you doing? Thought I'd do this show tonight. There's been so much going on ever since Trump decided to get us out of the Paris Agreement, and liberals everywhere are crapping their pants. It's been something to see. Not to mention CNN underlining Trump every way that they can. You know, that's kind of fun to watch sometimes, but it sort of gets old. What makes it get old so quick is just their consistency, and they get by with it so easy. That's the thing about it. They did fire Kathy Griffin, but still, it's every hour over there they're undermining and downplaying what our president says.
And Vice President Al Gore joins me now. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Vice President.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to get to the Paris Climate Accord in a second, but first I do want to get your reaction to the attack last night in London, on London Bridge. President Trump just made a tweet I want to get your reaction to. He wrote, quote, "At least 7 dead and 48 wounded in terror attack, and Mayor of London says there is, quote, no reason to be alarmed." What's your reaction to that tweet?
I actually happened to see the statement from the Mayor of London, and that's not what I heard him say. And I don't think that a major terrorist attack like this is the time to be divisive and to criticize a mayor who's trying to organize his city's response to this attack. The terrorists want us to live in a state of constant fear. And having an effective response is the main thing. And it looks to me like the London police were there in 6 minutes. And this scourge of terrorism has to be defeated. But we have to defeat it not only with force of arms, but with the force of our values.
All right, let's move on to the Paris Climate Agreement. President Trump said the decision to withdraw the U.S. from the agreement was about putting America first. Take a listen.
The Paris Agreement handicaps the United States economy in order to win praise from the very foreign capitals and global activists that have long sought to gain wealth at our country's expense. They don't put America first. I do, and I always will.
What's your response?
Well, the fastest growing sector of our economy is clean energy and part of the sustainability revolution. Solar jobs are now growing 17 times faster in the U.S. than other jobs. The single fastest growing job for the next 10 years, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is wind turbine technician. So we're seeing a sustainability revolution that is historic. It has the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution, but the speed of the digital revolution. And rather than trying to recreate the 19th century and paint a picture of a past that's gone, we need leadership to gear America for the 21st century. President Trump's decision was unfortunate. It undermined our country's stature. But here's the good news. With the leadership of governors like Jerry Brown and Andrew Cuomo and others, and mayors, Mike Bloomberg's doing a great job. We're seeing civic leadership businesses, Apple, Google, General Electric, you can go right down the list. We are going to see continued reductions in emissions in the U.S. We're going to meet the commitments under the Climate Pact in Paris, regardless of what President Trump does. And so we're seeing a lot of progress.
If we're going to meet it, if we're going to meet that goal of a 24 to 26% reduction in carbon gas emissions without being in the agreement, then Is there an argument to be made that we don't need to be in the agreement?
No, the requirements were voluntary. He could have simply changed those requirements. But my point is, we're seeing a technological revolution that is greatly needed. Somebody once said the Stone Age didn't end because of a shortage of stone. Something better came along. Same is true of the age of fossil fuels. But the Paris Agreement was really historic, but it laid the foundation for the faster progress that's needed in order to solve the climate crisis in time. And we could have faster progress with presidential leadership, but we're going to keep moving forward regardless of President Trump.
I want to get your reaction to something, an argument being made by the EPA Administrator, Scott Pruitt. Take a listen.
It was a failed deal to begin with. And even if all of the targets were met by all nations across the globe, it only reduced the temperature by less than 0.2 of 1 degree.
Less than 0.2 of 1 degree. President Trump made a similar argument.
Well, first of all, it's not true. But second, there was a famous economist, Rudy Dornbush, who once said, things take longer to happen than you think they will, and then they happen much faster than you thought they could.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here.
Some more horse
and the
shit.
Paris Agreement gives tremendous momentum for movement all around the world. India just announced that within 13 years, 100% of all their cars have to be electric vehicles. China's emissions have come down 4 years in a row. All over the world, we're seeing this movement. And now, electricity from solar and wind in many regions is less than half the cost of electricity from burning fossil fuels. So we start making this transition, then pick up steam, and then suddenly we cross the tipping point. That is what is beginning to happen. But the U.S. ought to be leading this revolution and creating more of the new jobs here in the United States.
During the
Folks, that's about half of that interview. But yeah, we are leading the world. We're probably changing the world, if you ask me. There hasn't been any other country that has done such a thing as outrageous and as bold as what President Trump done when he took us out of the Paris climate deal. That was a bold move. It really was, and a step I think that he took in the right direction. Being bold as it was, but moving along. How about him saying that Americans were gonna move toward better emissions regardless of what President Trump said or did. They might, if they continue to get by with it. They ain't nothing but a propaganda channel is all they are. I've never in my life witnessed a news channel like as biased as CNN. They are the biased people I've ever heard in my life. Jake Tapper makes me sick. Listen to this one. Play. I don't think that one's going to play for us, folks. I don't know. I hope so. I wanted to hear that one. I wanted you to hear it, rather. I don't think so. We might come back to that one. Let's try this one. come on, work for me. I don't know, I'll give it a second while it loads. This one is really important. I really wanted y'all to hear this one. They were all important though. I'll try my best to see to it that y'all hear them. I have some articles here too that I wanted to read. I'll get to that in a minute. Meanwhile,
Yeah, thanks so much for being with us, Ambassador
here
Hill.
we go.
Good morning, Jake.
So one.
Well, it started to play. This is Jake Tapper and the ambassador to the UN. I forget her name. I'll tell you in a second. A reply. I've been having so much trouble out of my internet lately.
4 countries have signed the Paris Climate Agreement. Only 3 nations are not.
Oh yeah, this is where he compares this to like Syria or something. I wouldn't play neither if I was a CNN video on YouTube, I swear it. That makes me so mad. I will fix it though, folks. If you'll give me just a moment. Bear with me.
I want to thank Jared Kushner, who's been so involved in this, and all of my guys. We have a great team. We have a team of all-stars.
That was Donald Trump in February praising his son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner. Kushner is now the focus, I should say, of the FBI's investigation for his contacts with Russia during the transition. Let's talk about that with our panel. Former Republican presidential candidate, Senator Rick Santorum, Jennifer Granholm, former Democratic governor of Michigan, Republican strategist Kevin Madden, and former Democratic Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. Senator Santorum, I'll start with you. Does this trouble you?
Not at all, to be very honest with you.
It doesn't trouble you, of course.
Absolutely not. Look, Jared Kushner was involved in the campaign on policy, was involved afterwards in the transition, and to me, it's not inappropriate at all for him to be talking to people about, at least the substance of what have I heard about, we don't know this to be true, was, hey, will the Russians back away from Iran? That's a good thing to be talking to Russia.
But with a back channel, I mean, to ask if he can have a communications channel directly to Moscow as a member of the presidential
transition team. Yeah, to me, look, there are all sorts of back channels that are established in lots of different capacities, and he's clearly a very close confidant of the president, and for him to have a back channel doesn't bother me in the least.
So,
It doesn't.
it's in a context, Rick. He fails to disclose meetings with the Russians on his security forms. There are, in the team, 18 failures to disclose contacts with Russia. Jim Comey is fired for investigating Russia. Mike Pence is lied to about Russian contacts. So the question really is, why all of this secrecy? What is going on underneath
this
all
is
of this
classic
cover-up?
conflation.
No, well, you can't deny all of those facts have happened. And so what's going on? This is a common sense question. Is it about the fact that Donald Trump has got financial interests that benefit his organizations and he doesn't want people to know that? Is it payback for the Russians having helped him get elected? Is it about covering up the Michael Steele dossier? Who knows? But this is why we need an independent commission at the level of Congress to be able to investigate this in addition to the special prosecutor to catch all of the context.
I think it's great, but nothing in this Jared
We agree
Kushner
on
story,
something.
to me, says that there is any connection between
that he lied
Russian
on his
meddling
forms
in the election and this story.
Kevin, you are a communications specialist. The White House is preparing a war room. How would you lead that war room and lead this communication strategy if you were in the White House?
Well, look, I think oftentimes you see White Houses when they're in trouble like this reflexively say, let's put together a war room. Well, a war room is no good unless you have a strategy. So the strategy has to be to compartmentalize the investigation part of this issue and have somebody whose daily job is to deal with just inquiries about the special counsel and his investigation. Because the biggest problem for this is where I am worried about it is that investigations are worrisome. They become a huge distraction. The president and his team have to get back on offense and talk about the issue agenda that got them there in the White House to begin with. So I think that's where I would focus, is compartmentalizing the inquiries about the special investigation, getting back on offense by talking about the agenda.
How's this playing in Ohio?
No one in Ohio is asking about Russia. I mean, we have to deal with this. We definitely have to deal with this. It's on the minds of the American people. But if you want to know what people in Ohio, they want to know about jobs. They want to know about their children. I was just in California where California folks, especially the national nurses, pushing for healthy California, single payer, Medicare for all kinds of things. I talked to a boomer, a baby boomer, African-American baby boomer who lives right here in D.C. Russia is not in his top 5. He believes that both parties are failing. I talked to a Gen Xer, a white male, who's in the union. He wants third party. We are losing. The president should be concerned about this. All Americans should be concerned about this. But if we were to go to Flint, they wouldn't ask you about Russia and Jared Kushner. They want to know how they're going to get some clean water and why 8,000 people are about to lose their homes. We are preoccupied with this. It's not that this is not important.
Yeah.
But everyday Americans are being left behind because it's Russia, Russia, Russia. Do we need all 535 members of the Congress to deal with Russia? Can some of them deal with some domestic?
Let me ask you about a former member of Congress, your former boss, the former Speaker, John Boehner. He's sort of been letting it rip lately. And this past week, he said the following. He praised the president for his work against ISIS, but he said everything else Trump has done has been a complete disaster. He's still learning how to be president. Now, if we were in the green room, I would ask you to give your answer with the John Boehner invitation because you're so good at it, but it's up to you. You do.
Well, look, this is John Boehner. I remember when we would brief him on Capitol Hill before he would do media briefings, he would oftentimes say something privately that we'd say, whoa, John, you can't say that out there because you have a responsibility to the conference. You have a responsibility to focus on the issue agenda. This is John Boehner unfiltered, and I think a lot of what he's saying is a reflection, not a perfect reflection, but there are a lot of members of Congress that are sort of exasperated right now that there hasn't been more of a focus on the issue agenda, and that what they're left to do is litigate the day-by-day news that's coming out about the special counsel investigation.
And Senator, you might think that the Jared story is not a big one, but it's hard to disagree with your former Gang of Seven member, John Boehner. That's going back in time, right?
26 years.
About the notion that the agenda is off track.
They're both right. I mean, the fact is that this administration should be doing so well and could be doing so well if they just focused on getting their agenda passed. The last 9 days hopefully have showed the president that if you stay on message, you stick to the script, you focus on policy, you drive home the messages that you talked about during the campaign and that people in America are excited about, you can be a great president. If you tweet every day and complain about the media and complain about how you're being treated, you're going to be sidetracked and you're not going to get your deals done.
And cut
That's the message.
And cut $800 billion for Medicaid.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why John Boehner said at the end of that, hallelujah, 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 that he's not in that position anymore, not in D.C. anymore, is because he sees what's coming down the pipe. The people are reacting to the fact that the Republicans are going to slash 23 million people off of Medicare. In fact, 17% of independents have said that they would vote, only 17% said that they would be in favor of a member of Congress who voted for that disastrous Republican health care bill, because if you're 64 years old and you're making $26,000 a year, their bill would have that person pay $16,000 a year in premiums. Someone making $14 an hour. Now, you cannot say that is a good thing, Rick Santorum.
I welcome this discussion. I mean, I understand what CBO says. CBO has gotten Obamacare wrong, not by a little bit, by a large margin. CBO always predicts that government-mandated solutions work better than the market-based solutions. So you just can't rely on CBO on this.
CBO is appointed by a Republican.
The government-run healthcare is not going to work, is not working, and we have to let the free market.
But even Speaker Boehner said that if it were him, that he would have advised the president to fix Obamacare and not necessarily.
Well, in fairness, it's easy for him to say that now. He also led a House to repeal Obamacare like 727 times.
But this is
pass.
real, though. Yeah. This flesh and blood is behind these decisions.
We just have a few seconds left. Tom MacArthur, who was a member of the Moderate Tuesday group, quit. And he said he thinks that the reality is that Republicans would rather just see this health care thing go away. You believe that?
I don't know. I think many folks have come to the conclusion that it is worse to not have delivered on a promise than it is to have to go out and litigate, I think, a new, or at least promote a new advancement of the AHCA. And I think that's one of the big worries, is that you'll have such a depressed Republican base if you don't follow through on the promise to repeal Obamacare.
Such a great discussion this morning. Thank you.
Folks, Trump is the first, not only president, but politician in U.S. history to be criticized for keeping his promises to the American people. And that's what's so amazing about this. Out of all the promises that he's kept, that's all we get is bickering and moaning from the left. That's all they know how to do. There's a video up on YouTube right now. I wished I could show it to you. But just type in CNN caught staging a fake news video by Mike Cernovich. Just posted about 5 hours ago. But yeah, that's cool. Here's the London mayor.
Described the grief and anger that our city is feeling today. Tragically, 6 people have been killed in this sickening attack and more than 40 injured, some of them critically. I'm appalled and furious that these twisted and cowardly terrorists deliberately targeted innocent Londoners and visitors to our city who were just enjoying their Saturday night. I condemn these terrorists in the strongest possible terms. They are barbaric cowards, and there is absolutely no justification for their evil and unforgivable actions. My thoughts are with the family and friends of the victims and everyone caught up in this horrific attack. I'd like to thank our emergency services who bravely tackled the terrorists and helped the injured. I've been in close contact with the Met Police Commissioner and senior officers throughout the night and will be attending the government's Cobra security meeting. I'd urge all Londoners to remain calm and vigilant today and over the days ahead. We are all shocked and angry today, but this is our city. We will never let these cowards win, and we will never be cowed by terrorism.
That's awful, folks. They've had about 3 terror attacks in the last couple of weeks. And little girls have been blown up. Some of them died, some of them still living. And that's all that they're worried about, is underlining the president or making you accept Islam. Folks, if Islam comes here, it's going to be every other day, something like what they're facing. And I don't want to look at Trump's back. Nobody else does either.
So, Dermot, what first brought you into show business?
Well, John, it's an interesting question. We haven't got all night, of course, but I don't know how this happened during the break, but this guy's very, very convincing. I'm still here with John Cleese and Charlize Theron. John, so you're over here at the moment, spend a lot of time UK, US?
Well, I work a lot in the US because they're such fans of Python, and it's very easy to earn good money there. And I don't have to be here in the winter, which I refuse to do. I mean, people have a bucket list, and I have one thing on my bucket list, which is that I never want to be cold again.
As objectively as you can, if such a thing is possible, how have you noticed that America's different now Trump's in power?
That's the Pope shit in the boot.
We see it obviously here from the news.
It's completely mad.
What, on the ground there, do you feel it?
People don't want to admit how mad it is. But Eric and I were on tour, and we went on stage the night after the election. And we get out in front of 2,000 people, and they're sitting there like this. They cannot believe what's happened. And we said it's our duty to cheer you up tonight. They all roared and clapped. But it's completely mad. I mean, the guy says, 3 days ago? He says, I've sent an armada towards North Korea. And then we find 2 days later that it's actually sailing in the opposite direction. And I think that's what people say, except that the Trump supporters are still at about 38, 39%. They still think he's great.
Yeah.
But these are the stupidest people you've ever met. One I thought was just wonderful. There was a woman on supporting him, and somebody said, what do you feel about that time when he was recorded on the bus saying, if you'll forgive me saying so, that if you're a celebrity, women expect you to grab them or grab their pussy?
Yeah.
And she said he would never have said that if he'd known he was being recorded.
I'll tell you what, it's crazy what they put out there, folks. It really is. And people actually laugh like it's funny or something, knowing good and well that it's not true. The Armada was going in the wrong direction. That ain't right. You can fact check that. That's not right.
Thanks so much for being with us, Ambassador Haley.
Good morning, Jake.
So 194 countries have signed the Paris Climate Agreement. Only 3 nations are not signatories to it. The United States, Nicaragua, which thought the emission standards were not tough enough, and Syria. So on the one issue that unites the world, essentially, the United States is now isolated, the proverbial skunk at the garden party. Are you not concerned that this will affect your ability to lead on other issues?
Well, I don't think we're the skunk at the party. I think that what we did was we watched out for our country. Look, I was a governor in South Carolina. I know how tough those regulations President Obama put on us because of the Paris Agreement were on our businesses and on our industries. It directly hit our jobs. And so what we want to do is say, look, We are a sovereign country. We're going to make sure we're looking out for the U.S. first. We will always be a leader in the environment. That's what we do. That's who we are. But we're going to make sure that we're not hurting our companies in the process. And there is a balance. There is clearly a difference between us and Nicaragua and us and Syria. The world knows that. So to put us in that category is not a real assumption.
No, I'm not the one that put us in the category. The president is. But when it comes to those the reduction in carbon emissions, that was every country set their own standard. Why did President Trump just renegotiate the United States standards so to make it less imposing? Why withdraw?
Why didn't President Obama get this through the Senate? There's a reason President Obama did this from a presidential standpoint as opposed to going through the Senate, because he knew he couldn't get it to pass. It was too onerous. The regulations were too strict, and it wasn't achievable, even if we had stayed in the Paris Agreement. And this is the part everyone needs to really think about. If we had stayed in the Paris Agreement, which the countries told us, oh, you can do it, we won't say anything.
We won't say
That's
nothing.
not who the U.S. is. One, we're truth tellers. We're going to tell the truth. Two, it was not achievable. What President Obama submitted the U.S. to was not achievable under our standards or any other country's standards. And then we've got to look at the fact we didn't want to be in violation of the agreement. And the executive that President Trump signed that rolled back the Clean Power Act a few months ago, that was already moving towards a pro-business situation. But what we do have is a lot of companies who care about green technology, care about making sure that we take care of the environment, and you have a president who's very focused on clean air, clean water, and jobs.
Well, you say we're truth tellers. Let me show you what President Trump has tweeted about climate change. Quote, the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive, unquote. Are you willing to acknowledge that that is nonsense?
What I will tell you is the regulations from the Paris Agreement were disadvantaging our companies. We know that. I knew that as a governor. We know that now. The jobs were not attainable as long as we had to live under those regulations. It wasn't possible to meet the conditions under the Paris Agreement had we even attempted to do that. And so I think we have to look at what's realistic. We've got a president who is going to watch out for the environment. It's what we do. It's who we are. We're going to continue to be a leader in the environment. The rest of the world wanted to tell us how to do it, and we're saying we will do it, but we'll do it under our terms.
But the standards were set by the United States for the United States. But just to be clear on this climate change,
the standards were set by President Obama and not passed through the Senate because the standards couldn't have been achieved.
No, but my point is, you said that the world was imposing standards on the United States. President Obama, the president of the United States at the time, is the one who set the standards. But moving that aside for 1 second, I just want to be clear on this.
Yeah.
You're not willing to acknowledge that calling climate change a Chinese hoax is just a big box of crazy.
Folks, do you see what the way they do things when you don't agree with them and you're on their show? They try to invert reality just as much as they can. First, he said that Trump signed us into this deal. He didn't. He wasn't the one that done it. The president did. Okay? And now he's sitting here saying that the U.S. is the one that set their own standards for the world. When it wasn't the U.S., it was Obama. And when she pointed that out, he turned that right back around like well, it was the United States. It was the president at the time.
Trump believes the climate is changing, and he believes pollutants are part of that equation. So that is the fact. That is where we are. That's where it stands. He knows that that it's changing. He knows that the U.S. has to be responsible with it, and that's what we're going to do. Just because we got out of a club doesn't mean that we don't care about the environment.
Let's talk about another club that we're in, NATO. One of the biggest concerns in Europe right now is that President Trump visited NATO headquarters, but was not willing to publicly reiterate the U.S. commitment to Article 5, that the principle that an attack on one nation in NATO is an attack on all. Russian President Vladimir Putin suggested this weekend that these squabbles at NATO are helpful to Russia. I understand that the president wants every country to pay its fair share, of course, but why was the president not willing to underscore the United States' commitment to our allies in NATO?
Because there was no change to policy. Of course we believe in Article 5. I just met with all of my NATO ambassadors yesterday. We've said a threat on one of us is a threat on all of us. NATO is going to...
Video cut out right there, folks. So actually froze. I'll have to restart that and all that. But anyway, yeah, folks, they invert reality just as much as they possibly can. It's all they're good for. Then they try to underline the president, what he says, what he does, all the time trying to point out how he's so stupid and they know better than anybody and yada da da da. He won the election. I wish that they would just get the hell over it and shut the hell up so the world can just move on. I do. The Democrats, their followers, the people that consider themselves liberals, it's really crazy, folks. It really is. If there's anybody out there listening tonight and would like to tell us how they feel about any of these things, they can call us. The number 276-243-1548. 276-243-1548. I'm working on getting our video back up. It'll take me a few minutes, just bear with me. The rain is coming down out there tonight. Yeah, I can't wait to see the jobs come back to this part of the world. I'm tired of seeing all these families doing without and struggling to make it on these little fixed incomes. They really don't have a chance. There't very few politicians that are in office that feel the hurt of what poverty does to their communities. There's very few that see it, and there's the ones that do see it, even less than them actually care. And I just wish that they would try to do more to help these people instead of disrupt all the time. All the time creating division and trying to make everybody poorer than what they are already. Here's John Kerry after Trump's speech. I've not seen this, by the way.
Well, my immediate reaction is that it's an extraordinary abdication of American leadership. It is a shameful moment for the United States to have unilaterally walked away from an agreement which did not have one other country requiring us to do something. It was a voluntary program. We designed the program. The president was not truthful with the American people today, and the president who talked about putting America first has now put America last, together with Syria, which is in the midst of a civil war, and Nicaragua, which thought the agreement didn't go far enough. This is an extraordinary moment of fake news, because the economy he described is not the economy of America. America has been gaining jobs in solar. Solar has gained 17 times the rate of our economy. There are 2.6 million jobs in our country in clean energy. Half of them are in states that Donald Trump won. So he is not helping the forgotten American. He is hurting them. Their kids will have worse asthma in the summer. They will have a harder time having economic growth. He's made us an environmental pariah in the world. And I think it is one of the most self-destructive moves I've ever seen by any president in my lifetime.
Oh my God. Here he is on CBS this morning. He's the one lying to the American people, folks. It's not Trump. Trump's just saying that we need better science and more science and more people checking into climate change and this and that. You know, there's a lot of different science that goes into anything, especially something as complex as this world that we live in. And yeah, again, he said that we set those standards. We didn't set those standards. President Barack Obama set those standards. Then he signed another executive order making it in effect because he knew he couldn't get it to go through Congress. He knew that. But anyway, let's get into some articles. This article's from The Sun. Panic at London Bridge. London Bridge attack. Terror incident leaves up to 7 feared dead after van plurals through and into pedestrians before 5 men jump out and start stabbing people. A gang of 5 terrorists wearing stab-proof vests drove a van into pedestrians at 50 miles per hour on London Bridge before attacking revelers with hunting knives. Up to 7 people who were feared dead and 20 hurt in the 10 p.m. attack. Staff at a packed pub locked the doors as the gang tried to smash their way in. One man was stabbed 5 times. A picture taken outside the Wheat Sheaf Pub Borough Market shows 2 of the terrorists lying dead after being gunned down by cops. 4 explosions believed to be controlled explosions by police were heard outside the Sun offices in London Bridge between 1:23 a.m. and 1:49 a.m. That was a horrible scene, folks. The article just goes on to talk about different people's stories and different accounts of the terror attack. Again, that article's up on the sun.co.uk. It's easily found. This article's a little bit old, but I thought it was interesting. It was published on April 27th, 2016 by Mark Thiessen. This is from Newsweek.com. Opinion: How ISIS smugglers terrorists into Syrian refugees. This article first appeared on the American Enterprise Institute site. Last week, the Washington Post reported for the first time on exactly how ISIS was able to infiltrate operatives into Europe, hiding them among the flood of refugees so they could carry out deadly terrorist attacks. In addition to interviews with intelligence officials, the Post was able to interview an ISIS commander who boasted about how the worst is yet to come. The Post reports, on a crisp morning, late October, 198 migrants arrived on the Greek island of Leros, all of them seemingly desperate people seeking sanctuary in Europe. But hiding among them were 4 men with a very different agenda. The 4 were posing as way-weary Syrians, all carrying doctored passports with false identities, and they were on a deadly mission for the Islamic State. 2 of the 4 would masquerade as migrants all the way to Paris. There, at 9:20 p.m. on November 13th, they would detonate suicide vests near the Stade de France sports complex, fulfilling their part in the worst attack on French soil since World War II. The other 2 men would not make it that far, stopped upon arrival in Greece for lying about their identities. They were delayed, but only for a few weeks before being granted permission to continue their journey deeper into Europe. The Post notes that both intelligence officials and the ISIS commander warned that these attacks are only the beginning. European security officials say they think that the Islamic State has seeded terror cells on the continent over the past year. The vast majority of migrants were genuinely fleeing war and poverty, but over the past 6 months, more than 36 suspected militants who impersonated migrants have been arrested or died while planning or carrying out acts of terrorism. They include at least 7 directly tied to the bloody attacks in Paris and Brussels. The Islamic State is gloating that they have far more lying in wait. Quote, "We have sent many operatives to Europe with the refugees," end quote. An Islamic State commander said in an interview over an encrypted data service, quote, "Some of our brothers have been fulfilled their mission, but others are still waiting to be activated," end quote. This is the problem with President Obama's proposal to bring 10,000 Syrian refugees into the U.S. It creates an opportunity for ISIS to do to the U.S. what it done in Europe. But instead of addressing these legitimate concerns, President Obama is busy demoralizing those who disagree with his plans. On his recent trip to Germany, Obama blamed opposition to his plan of xenophobia, declaring, "These are unsettling times, and when the future is uncertain, there seems to be an instinct in our human nature to withdraw to the perceived comfort and security of our own tribe, our own sect, our own nationality. People who look like this sound like us in today's world more than any time in human history. That is a false comfort." The president is wrong. What Americans fear are not people who don't look like this, but people who want to kill us, given the way ISIS used refugee flows to attacks in Paris. That is a valid concern. That does not mean, however, that refusing Syrian refugees is a sufficient answer, and this is where the president critics falter. It is true that the vast majority of refugees are good and decent people who are fleeing the carnage wrought by the Islamic State militant group. They are not advocates of Islamic radicalism. They are the victims of Islamic radicalism. The danger is not from them, but the Islamic radicals who are using them as cover to infiltrate operatives into the West. In the case of the Paris attacks, only 4 of the 198 refugees who arrived on the Greek island of Leros that day were terrorists. That is just 2%, but that 2% were able to carry out an attack that killed at least 130 people. We need to find a way to stop that 2% while helping the 98%. And there are ways to do so without endangering our security, but they involve hard choices that President Obama does not want to make, like, for example, creating a safe inside Syria where Syrian refugees can live safely, much like the way we protect the Kurdish regions of northern Iraq and Saddam Hussein after the 1991 Gulf War. But President Obama does not want to do this. It is much easier to accuse your political opponents of racism. Unfortunately, those opposing to admitting refugees are making it easier for the president to make such accusations, because instead of proposing better, safer, more and compassionate alternatives to helping the victims, their arguments stop at, quote, no, end quote, and quote, no, end quote, is not good enough. I think that's a lot of what lost the Democrats the election. Not to mention the WikiLeaks, Hillary Clinton and Uma Abedin. They had a lot to do with it too, actually. Speaking of Mrs. Uma Abedin, according to the New York Post, Uma Abedin has invited Anthony Weiner back home. A article written by Rebecca Rosenberg and Kevin Fassick. Just when you thought Uma Abedin finally had enough, the Hillary Clinton aide has invited her admitted sex offender hubby back home again, the Post has learned. Anthony Weiner's long-suffering wife filed for divorce earlier this month. The same day, disgraced ex-congressman pleaded guilty to sexting with a 15-year-old girl, but Aberdeen has since renewed the lease on their pricey Union Square duplex and invited back home the man who has repeatedly heaped humiliation upon her, sources told the Post. The luxurious 3-bedroom, 1,500 square foot pad at One Irving Place features an, quote, expansive panoramic view of Union Square Park and the Midtown skyline, end quote, according to Corgoran listings, however how you say that. The sex-crazed Pole, who had been sleeping on his mother's couch in Park Slope, was to move out Tuesday, a source said, quote, he was supposed to move, end quote, the building source explained, quote, but they just signed for another year, end quote. Another source said, quote, she still hasn't served him the divorce papers, end quote. Weiner, who will have to register as a sex offender as part of the plea deal with the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office, was spotted Tuesday at about 9 a.m. strolling out of the building with his and Aberdeen's 5-year-old son. A pal of the couple said Weiner has been the primary caretaker of the boy, especially while Aberdeen worked on Clinton's failed presidential bid. Quote, Uma is worried about her son, the pal said, that priority, and Anthony plays a very strong role in raising him, end quote. It's unclear whether Aberdeen, 41, is on the $11,900 a month lease alone or signed with Weiner, who is scheduled to be sentenced on September the 8th. Brokers could not discuss the leasing agreement because they signed a strict non-disclosure agreement. Quote, we are not worried about this one, end quote, a broker said. Quote, this is a very sensitive rental, end quote. But Weiner, 52, who pleaded guilty May 19th to one count of transferring obscene material to a minor, may not be around much after Labor Day. He faces 21 to 27 months behind bars for carrying the lurid exchange with the North Carolina team. Quote, I have a sickness, but I do not have an excuse, end quote, he told federal judge Loretta Peresca between sobs. Quote, I know that was morally wrong, end quote. Aberdeen was not in the courtroom. Weiner's creepy behavior may have been even played a role in the 2016 presidential election. The FBI opened an inquiry into Weiner's conduct in September and seized his laptop and phones, leading the feds to realize some of Clinton's emails were on his computer. Then FBI Director James Comey told Congress he would reopen an investigation into Clinton's private email server 2 weeks before the election as a result. Weiner was long been plagued by a weakness for sexually charged cyber correspondence. The Post reported in August 2016 that he was still sexting women, prompting his wife to announce their separation. He had texted a crotch shot to a West Coast mom that included his then 3-year-old son in the bed next to him. He entered outpatient therapy for sex addiction in Tennessee last fall, where a Post reporter and a photographer spotted him riding a horse as part of his treatment. The Weiner sexting scandal began in 2011 when the then up-and-coming congressman accidentally tweeted a picture of his bulging member out to the public and then claimed his account had been hacked. Eventually, he came clean and resigned from office. He tried to revive his political career in 2013, running for New York mayor, but the campaign was quickly derailed when 22-year-old Cindy Leathers came forward with proof of their online relationship. Revelations of other online sexting partners soon followed. Aberdeen and Weiner didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. And that's just a little bit of their history. Folks, I guess I'll cut this episode short and catch y'all on the next time. This is Alex Morgan. Thank you for joining. See y'all soon.